What up, what up, what up, bass heads, what's happening? Welcome to episode number 1, the official first episode of the Blue Collar Bassist podcast. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Ted and I talk bass. I am passionate about helping my fellow bass players of all skill levels and abilities find more enjoyment and success and fulfillment in navigating this world of what I like to call the blue collar bass player. One of the ways I do that is through conversations like the one I'm going to have tonight with my new partner, Ian Trusheim, who I met through Instagram, and a fantastic project that he took on for creating a bass groove every single day for 365 days. So we're going to get into that conversation. Listen, if you are watching live, let's light up that chat box. I want you to tell me where you are watching from. MJ Morgan, what's up? He says the volume is very low. Thanks, Tiny. I want you guys to light up that chat box. Tell me where you are watching from. If you're on the replay squad, you're going to have to use the timestamps below. Now, let me tell you. Oh, also, if you have a question, type that in the chat box. There are no silly questions. Make sure you put a Q in front of that so that I can catch it. All right. So let me tell you about my man, Ian. Ian is a versatile electric bassist, composer, and music instructor with over 2 decades of professional experience. Like me, he's a groove dude. He has a deep love for great songs, great grooves, and playing in a variety of different situations. So if you're ready, say I'm ready. All right, enough of that. Ian, what's good, man?
Oh man, thank you for having me, Ted. This is a real treat, man. I'm excited.
Dude, I'm excited to have you here. Look, we got some people coming in the house. They're gonna light up.
That's great.
They're gonna light up. You guys, Tiny is saying that the volume is low. Tiny is saying that the volume is low, but on my end, it's looking good. So y'all going to let me know what the volume is like on your end. If I need to make an adjustment, I will do that. Otherwise, we're going to keep on rolling. We're going to keep on rolling. MJ, thanks for playing along. Let's see. So saying his volume is hot and my volume is low. Tiny, I'm not sure what to do about that, my friend. I'm not sure what to do about that. Ian.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you go on and tell the folks a little bit about yourself, brother?
Oh man, I love music. I love bass playing. I'm happy to be here. I don't know. I'm kind of a blank slate right now, to be honest. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I have a band called the Morel Trio. We might be your favorite band you've never heard of before.
Nice.
That's a
What kind
project
of
I'm really
music is
passionate about. You know, I usually say jazz, Americana, rhythm, and blues because
Yeah.
I feel like that covers a wide spectrum. But we love the Meters, love James Brown, so there's definitely some funk stuff. But Medeski Martin Wood, Bill Frisell, John Schofield,
Nice.
instrumental music.
Nice.
Trying to get some recordings out there into the world so some people can hear us. So that's, in terms of like currently what's going on, that's definitely my main project. And the guitarist, a buddy of mine, we've been writing music together. We've known each other for I don't know, man. I'm just here for the ride, you know.
Nice.
I love music and bass is the best.
Nice, man. I had the pleasure of playing with Zigaboo for many years out in the Bay Area. So I went to that funk university. Man, look, let's get into it. Hopefully, I just made an adjustment on my vocal on my mic level. So hopefully this is better for some folks. You know,
can I get a little more reverb? You know,
what's that?
I said, can I get a little more reverb?
Get right a little bit, make it a little bit away from me. So what I want to get into, man, like really what I want folks to walk away from this conversation with is sort of your thought process for coming up with a groove a day. right? How do you go from uh, the blank page, as it were, to a finished groove? But let's first start with, what was the inspiration for this project?
I mean, truth be told, it was a spontaneous decision that I didn't really think through. I just thought, yeah, I'm going to do this every day. And to be clear, I didn't make it 365 days. I did 211 days.
Hey,
And I
man.
had to hang it up for needed to pursue some other
Sure.
projects, let's say. But now I'm doing a 2-bar Tuesdays, so it's like count on me for at least doing one video a week. But
Yeah.
initially, I mean, I just thought it'd be a fun thing, and I heard John Patitucci say something years ago that he makes all his students try to like create 1 and 2 bar patterns. That's like a part of his weekly assignment. And I mean, a lot of the music I love, I'm not going to say all of it, but I love like I even or Melvin Dunlap with Bill Withers, or George Porter, or Tommy Cogbill. Just so much great Lucky Scott, all that like Superfly stuff with Curtis Mayfield. A lot of my favorite bass lines just happen to be 2-bar bass lines. And I like the idea of, I love repetitive, sort of like trance inducing ostinato type grooves.
Sure.
So that's part of it. I also like the idea of like 2-bar bass lines with little variations. So it seemed like a good thing to practice. And I've been known to rant, so feel free to stop me if I'm
No, no,
not
no,
making
man.
sense here.
You're good. You're good. We're talking about practice, right?
Yep.
Um,
Practice.
it is a practice. Like, a 2-bar groove, in my opinion, can be like a meditation, right? If you
Yes.
can stick into this thing, and what, a lot of times we'll listen to music, we'll listen to bass players, and we'll hear all the, the pyrotechnics, I like to call them, right? And not realize that really all that is a 2-bar pattern that's being repeated with subtle variations. You see what I'm saying? So like,
Absolutely.
what I like to call the groove architecture. Patrick Pfeiffer calls it the groove skeleton. So can you get into a little bit, about, you're having your coffee or whatever, you're sitting there, you're like, ah, man, I don't know what to do. Where do you start?
First off, I got to give Patrick Pfeiffer a shout out because he's a former teacher of mine. I love
Right.
Patrick, and the groove skeleton. I mean, that was it's a great concept. Or I like that you said groove architecture. And one thing I wanted to say about like I think you said it's sort of meditative, or I forget exactly what you said, but one of the things I love about playing and practicing 2 bars is the chance to hone in on what you're doing and like your
Mm,
time and your sound. Can you play the same thing for 5 minutes? And then you
mm,
start to notice inconsistencies in your playing, like, oh, that note was a little louder. So it's a chance to really control your dynamics, your articulations, your stamina. So from a practical standpoint, I mean, I'd like encourage all my students to either create 2-bar bass lines or just to play 2-bar bass lines and find um, all the micro organisms or whatever, all this the small stuff that's happening just by playing repetitively.
yeah.
So I wanted to say that. But in terms of like you're having coffee, and I'm sure you can relate, sometimes you could be brushing your teeth and I just feel like a bass line pops in my head and I'm running around scrambling for my phone or to find a bass so I can either hum the line or pick it up and figure it out. And I don't want to take that for granted, but sometimes it's that simple where you just hear a bass line in your head. And then other times, to me, there's no like set thing. Sometimes I might listen to a drum beat and try to find some inspiration. And it could be as simple as, okay, this drum groove is a 4-bar loop.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just try to play something that's 2 bars, and it could be match the kick drum. Like, what's the hi-hat doing? Is the hi-hat playing 16th notes? Maybe I'll play 8th notes. Or, I like the fire and water approach. So if a drum part's really busy, I usually try to play simply.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Vice versa. If it's kind of a simple boom, pat, boom, boom, pat, that kind of thing, maybe I'll feel like I could play a more active bass line. I
Well, it's
feel
like
like that's not super concrete, but to me, it's not, there's not a do this every time. It's kind of reacting to what's happening around you.
and that's where I was going to go with that. So we a lot of times we hear this, play with the kick drum, right?
Mhm.
And sure, that's a dope, uh, that's a good concept, right, on the surface. But when we analyze, popular bass lines, a lot of times you're having more of a conversation with the kick drum. Playing with Zigaboo was an interesting thing, right? First of all, learning, not only learning George Porter's lines, but Zigaboo has a whole catalog of his own music, right? So we didn't just play meters tunes, and um, I'm going to say this very carefully, very judiciously. He's not like he's funky, and he's from New Orleans, so he's got some lilt in his playing. You know what I mean? And he would play around with where he would like flip the beat. Like one time we were playing God, I can't remember the name of it. Boom, dun, 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 dun. I can't even remember the name of the
I'm
song.
trying to think of what song that is. Yeah, yeah.
But A minor thing. Anyway, uh he I'm on stage at this place called the New Parish in Oakland, and he just like flipped the beat, and it felt like I was like, damn, am I drunk? I mean, I I had a drink, but I don't know what's going on. And then I'm like, play that line. Don't just let him do whatever he's gonna do. He would always say, if you have a good night, I have a good night. If you have a bad
Yeah.
night, I have a bad night. So we're having this conversation, right? But I want to go back. You were talking about this inspiration part. What about, do you ever get in this, if you ever do you ever get in this space where it's like, no, I need to rely on craft, right? I need to
Mm.
sit here and say, you know, I'm going to make a groove. I'm going to start on beat one and the end of beat two.
I love that you said the end of beat two because uh, I will answer your question, but it's like one of the things about doing it every day, and I encourage this for everyone, is you will quickly realize what your tendencies are as a bass player. And
Mhm.
so you're kind of like, oh wow, this is like the fifth time this week that I've played maybe the same progression of notes, maybe the same rhythm. And I kind of come from the school of like the Duck Dunn thing where he wasn't playing on beat two. I'm not saying Duck Dunn never played on beat two.
Sure.
I think I misread a quote from Duck Dunn when I was younger where he said that Al Jackson told him to never get to beat two before the snare drum. And I think I interpreted it as like, don't play on beat two. But I think Al Jackson was just saying, like, let my hi hat be the timekeeper and make sure we're getting to beat two together.
Mm-hmm.
But when you said the end of two, it's interesting to me. That was like one of the immediate things I noticed from doing the daily challenge was like, oh wow, yeah, like you play something on beat one because that's kind of what we're told to do.
Mm-hmm.
Rest on the first 16th of beat two. Maybe I play the E, maybe I play the and it's just like the power of the dotted quarter note followed by a eighth note. And if you like rhythm and blues and soul and funk, which I definitely do, that groove is everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like when doves cry, kind of, right? It
Yep.
could.
Yep.
So uh, one thing I'll say on certain days, it wasn't necessarily I'm going to do this form of play on beat one. It was kind of like I'm not going to play on beat one, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I want to do a pickup. Like my phrase is going to start at the end of a like 1, 2, 3, ba-doo, ba-doo, bat, so that the line is all leading into beat one, and that's kind
Yeah.
of the accent. So that was a cool challenge, and it might just depend. Like that could be a thought before you even pick up the bass. Like this is what I'm going to try and do today. Other times, it could just be. Um, I mean, one of my favorite bass lines is sitting on the dock of the bay, just that classic
Mm-hmm.
opening figure, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's nothing wrong with roots and fits. And so sometimes it could be can I just make a good bass line with the root and a fifth?
Yeah.
It doesn't get more traditional and foundational than that.
Well, I think that's one of the challenges of playing an instrument like the electric bass. If you go, I started playing in '83, and aside from maybe Jocko, there weren't, we didn't have a lot of these soloistic players around, right? Most of the people that were pushed in front of us were not even pushed in front of us, but most of the players that I knew were support players. So not having the context of chords and different things like that, you're like, I got this root and this fifth. What is this? What does this mean? What does this do? You know what I'm saying? I had a question that I wanted to ask you, and I lost the thought. But speaking of chords, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find yourself playing in the same key center? Oh, I know what I want to tell you. I'm gonna come back to that. I'm gonna come back to
Yeah,
that
please.
because I'm working on a transcription right now for a song called "Watching You" by Slave, Mark Adams on bass. It starts, the groove really starts on the of beat 4.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know what I'm saying? And so like I find that the uhs of beats and the e's of beats, we were talking earlier before we went live, talking about these subdivisions. Man, the e of a beat and the of a beat are just, they smell, like wet magic shave. You know what I'm saying? But
I mean, and you have to be so rhythmically strong because those songs, I don't know that song off the top of my head, but it's like we're either hitting the bullseye or we're not. And that's something I'm always trying to work on, say with my students, is like really working on your command of time and your 16th note understanding, not to play like Jocko 16th notes, but let's say it's on, like there's a hit on the E of 3. That is not up for debate. That is like a mathematical equation
yeah,
that you need to arrive at in time.
yeah,
And that's what makes like, it's funny, man. I remember being in college, and I guess I got to shout out like there was the Hastings brothers, and this guy's Ted. It's funny enough, this guy's name was Ted and Chris, and these guys weren't musicians, but they were music lovers, and they were some of the first people I hung out with that were like, we would just listen to records, and these guys turned me on to like What's Going On and Tower of Power, or the Marvin Gaye record What's Going On and Tower of Power, and countless records. And I remember like we'd listen to Tower of Power and Ted would say, "Oh man, it's so tight." And I'm like, feel like a kid. And I didn't really, I was embarrassed to say, well, what is it? Why do you think it's tight? And I was just like, yeah, it's really tight. And then maybe I'd listen to like the Rolling Stones and I'd say, man, check this out. Like, this is really tight. And they go, this isn't tight. And I'm like, okay, what are they talking about? But I mean, that's just a funny memory I have. But Tower of Power was definitely tight. Or you listen to Lettuce,
yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. These bands are so tight
Yeah,
because they're like very much in agreement on what the time feel is,
yeah.
where the syncopations are, where the hits are. I don't know if that. What
Well,
was the question?
when I think of when I think of groove, it's like Anthony Wellington said in the Groove Workshop. When he's talking about time, and one thing he said that really stuck with me was that the idea of time is not it is not, it's not nebulous. It's finite, right? It's very concrete. You can see, when you get this understanding, you can see this in the same way that a surveyor can look down the street and see, well, that's so many yards or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
When I think of groove, yes, I do have this one part of my brain that thinks in what I like to call fairy dust. You know what I mean? And and all the good feels, and hyperbole. You know what I'm trying to say.
I'm with you, man.
But when King Floyd, Groove Me,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Boom, 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 right? Yeah, it all feels good and everything kind of fits into that pocket. But I think of that bass groove, that bass line, that bass motif. That's a groove. You can
Absolutely.
sure you can play any other combination of notes in that B flat 6 chord, but it ain't gonna be groove me unless it's boom 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 boom. And while we're at it, I was thinking
That's a 2-bar bass line.
that's a 2-bar bass line. I was thinking about this on a treadmill today.
Yeah.
I kid you not. I was thinking when I grew up in New Orleans, and I can remember distinctly hearing that song on a 45. My grandmother had one, and some of y'all are going to be able to relate to this, had one of those long console things that had the record player in it and the disco lights on it. And I did not like that song. I didn't like it. And I was like, it was like vegetables. Like I really didn't understand it. And then of course,
Mm.
being from New Orleans, it became like this staple tune that I'm always playing. You know what I'm saying? But I went on a tangent there. Let me ask you this: if you were with a student, right? Marie Taylor says treadmill and shower thoughts. That must be a
Eh,
friend.
Marie's awesome. Marie's a strong bass player. That's
What's
great that
up,
she's here.
Marie?
This is awesome. Yeah.
Welcome,
That's
welcome.
exciting.
uh Treadmill and I'm serious. I was on the treadmill.
That's the next podcast series.
Man, look, a lot of things come to you on the treadmill. But if let's say I'm a student and
Okay.
you're trying to teach me, right? um I am I just got a bass. I kind of got something, right? But you want to get me playing right away. What would you do? I know I'm putting you on the spot right now.
Ooh. Oh, I mean, that's we need more direction. You know what's funny is you were saying that one of the things I thought was I'm not necessarily going to, if it's like a rhythmic thing, I'm not going to just start talking 16th notes right away, and I'm going to talk about a meter song, Look a Pie Pie, where they go and they go bookach bookach ah
Mm-hmm.
bookach, and it's like you can hear that if you know that song, you start feeling the groove. And sometimes I do like just silly sounds like that to get a rhythm across because what is that? That's one E and 3 E and one E and two. Yeah, one E and 3 E and But
Sure.
someone might be thinking one E and what are you talking about? But if you just go play bookach, it's like they're gonna, I think, relate to that quicker. So that on the rhythm side, it's not necessarily like immediately put the metronome on and start working on your subdivisions. That comes in time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the first thing, if that's why I was like, we need more direction. If someone's just getting a bass, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure they're holding it properly, right? And just fundamentals of the positioning of your bass, and make sure the headstock's not like pointing down at the floor, and that there's no harsh angles in your wrist, and that everything is relatively ergonomically sound so that you can play physically comfortable. And we can get super nerdy with that stuff, but the first thing is like, and it's the plucking hand.
Yeah.
It's the rest stroke, and getting a consistent sound. And you could put a drum beat on, and I've done this with a brand new student, and get them to play an open E, and it could be match the kick drum. Yes, that's like a great guideline. And then the more advanced you get, you start to feel like I don't necessarily want to always match the kick drum. But if someone's brand new, it's like if the drum beat's going boom, ga, boom, boom, ga, it's like hear that low thing, just play that. Let the note ring. Bum, bum, bum. Then you teach them some note duration, right? Go ahead.
Where you're talking about the plucking hand. A lot of us don't realize the plucking hand is the engine room. In
Absolutely.
in my opinion,
It is.
Jazz has a question here. Newbie question for any of you: how do I remember a set of R&B songs without having to bring sheet music?
Ooh,
Ian, let me roll on this first because I have a little bit of experience with it. I mean, I know
please.
you do too. I'm not saying that you don't, but this is another thing that I was thinking about on on the treadmill. And this is the type of thing, man, that we need to talk about. Listen, the if I yeah, I like to say the way to learn a lot of songs is really to learn a lot of songs, right? And that sounds, what comes first, the cart or the horse? But what you'll find is that a lot of these songs have the same ingredients, right? They're all connected. And when you start hearing certain rhythms and things like that, you'll be like, we've all had that experience of riding in a car and thinking, dang, why does that song sound like that song, or whatever? Because it's all kind of derivative. You know what I'm saying? And I know that's like a short-ish way of answering a pretty broad question. But I think if you were learning a different language, you would have to immerse yourself in that language, right? Would you agree with that, Ian?
100%. I mean, I agree with that completely. One thing I'll add, and I feel really fortunate, like, my father's a musician. Well, I come from a musical family, and my dad's cousin Mark is a strong guitar player, and I appreciate this as time goes on. Where when I was just learning how to play bass, I would get to jam with my dad and his cousin Mark, and we'd play blues. And I honestly, like, I think about being, say, 15, and it's like blurry trying to remember it, but I definitely remember being in the basement and playing songs like Pride and Joy. And I'm hearing this like 1 4 5 12 bar blues stuff. But I don't think they were really saying that. I was just kind of picking it up, and they were patient with me, But what I'm getting at is like, learn your blues. And I'm not trying to be an old man on the porch, but if you
Oh,
learn 12 bar blues and you can hear the 1, the 4, and the 5 really strongly,
sure.
that is going to influence all the other music you listen to. Because then I started, like, a couple years later, I was playing a lot of country and bluegrass music. And this idea of the 1, the 4, and the 5 was just like so branded,
Sure.
into my brain, that anytime I'm listening to music, I can't not reference what the chord progression is based on what I'm hearing as a 1, 4, and 5. Or you might be listening to a song and realize, man, this is a 12 bar blues, and it doesn't sound like a blues shuffle. It could be something totally different. It could be an R&B song, and are we talking like rhythm and blues, or something? R&B now is different than what it was in the 60s and 70s, but those ingredients. Or when you sang "Groove Me," boom, 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 beep, that's, I mean, that's like a triad, right? Unless I'm not remembering the bass line correctly. But then I'm totally saying song examples, but this is what Ted's talking about. You just have references. So
Yeah.
what I just sang, and I'm like, that sounded like the intro of Sir Duke. I'm not a great singer, but that's not the bass line of Sir Duke. But you just start to have all these references of, if you can hear that horn line at the beginning of Sir Duke, now you know what a major triad sounds like. In any other song, you have that reference.
Sure. You know, I I kind of made a reputation for myself, kind of being a guy that can just come and play. And
Yeah.
my bag has been R&B, top 40, funk, that type of stuff. With rock and pop in there. I can go play weddings like all day, no rehearsal, no whatever, right? Um Tiny mentioned something, talking about the staple singers. Just Sunday night we were playing My Girl, but
Yeah.
then when some people will go in boom, 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 boom. They'll go into just
Yeah.
imagination from there.
Another 2 bar bass line. I wrote that down as one of my favorite 2 bar bass lines.
Other
Yeah.
2 bar bass line, and it's all over. And we got this thing, at barroom music. You know what I'm saying? Like hole in the wall music, and like those progressions are going to be similar, if not the same. Sunday night we went to My Girl to Just My Imagination to I Want to Sex You Up, all working over the same thing, right? And so I think picking up this vocabulary is the same way like you and I have never met in person. We both speak English. We're both musicians. We both have the similar interest in music, so we can have this conversation, right? And I think it's important for us to be patient with ourselves as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like what you said about blues. The first thing I ever played in public. seventh grade talent show was in
Nice.
blues by myself
Amazing. On the bass or on the guitar or something?
on bass.
That's awesome.
On,
Hey, I
on
want to circle back to the guy's question about like how do you learn a set of music? Uh and the great Todd Johnson, who's a great bass player and a great educator, he says this all the time. It's kind of funny. He's like, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." And
time,
so
Lord.
don't feel like you have to learn a whole set. I mean, that is the goal. But let's say it's 10 songs. Like, can you memorize 3 songs? And then the next gig, can you memorize 5 songs? And then, or I'm just making up numbers, but like maybe force yourself the song that you kind of know to turn the iPad off. Can you just maybe you know it better than you think you do and you just have to get your eye. It's like we all rely on our GPS now, but if you drive a certain place enough times, you know how to get there. You don't need the GPS. So you have to sort
Oh,
of challenge yourself and go ahead, Ted.
no, I don't want to cut you. I don't want to cut you off, but Charles Ray Long has a question that's right along these lines. What you're saying. I want to let you finish your thought though, because I did cut you off.
No, I mean that's it. It's sort of like okay, so, I've played more weddings than I ever want to count, and that's okay. I'm grateful for the work. But there's certain songs that I wrote charts for years ago, and I've played these songs. Here's a perfect example. Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman. And it's like that song's got some twists and turns. It's got some odd like bar phrasing, a couple bars of two, but I've played that song 100 times or more. And one gig last year, I just was like, I don't need the chart for this. Like,
Sure.
I think I can play this. And I just turned the iPad off and it's like, yeah,
Dude,
like I could totally play the
I
song.
got some tunes like that I was like, and I caught myself, right? And I'm like, you need to stop that, right? You
Yep.
need to stop that. You need to learn
I
that.
call it my blankie.
Yeah. And also there's, after a while there comes some tunes that you just need to know, right? If you're
Yep.
going to get out there in the world, you just need to know them or be able to fake your way through them. And I would say, somebody when I first moved back to New Orleans from the Bay Area, um I got hooked up with the BB King All-Star Band here in New Orleans. And it was just, hey, do you know this? You know this? And one thing that I made sure that I did was I didn't get a deer in the headlights look, right?
Yeah.
And that comes with time. Don't get me wrong, that comes with time and experience. But now they're like, if I don't know it, I'm gonna know it, but I'm gonna know it in a minute, you know.
Yeah.
And so Charles is saying I have a show in January, and I need to learn 40 plus songs I've never played before. How does one remember that many songs without forgetting? I think going back to what Ian was saying about, challenging yourself. One thing I do is anytime I get a list, a song list from somebody, I make a Spotify playlist. I make a playlist. I don't care if I got 20 playlists with the same songs in them. I'm taking inventory and I'm touching that inventory every single day. Back in the days, and I don't think we do this enough, but back in the day, it used to be the needle drop or can you play what's on the radio? You know what I'm saying? And so, turn on Spotify. One thing, here's a bit of game I think is game, is wherever your local area, start Googling bands that are working in that town. A band that's worth their salt, that's like really working, like really out there working, they are going to have a song list on their website. 9 out of 10 times, they'll have a song list. And if you find a handful, and then start looking outside your area, and what you'll find is that most bands, coast to coast, are going to have the same songs on their list. And so, Charles Ray Long, that is this, what we were talking about Todd Johnson a minute ago, is eat that elephant one bite at a time. One bite at a time.
I agree with all of that completely. And what Ted's talking about, like the common songs throughout the country, I call those gimmies. Like, and we don't have to list those, but there's certain songs like a Brown Eyed Girl. If you're in a working band, you need to know Brown Eyed Girl. You need to know Wagon Wheel. And then there's some rock songs. Like those are just little examples. But The
Believe me.
playlist thing is crucial. That was literally what I was going to say. It's like make a playlist, and anytime you're able, anytime you have free time, listen to that. You're washing the dishes, you're putting uh going to the grocery store, or if you're driving to a gig, listen to that music. If
Yeah.
you're going for a walk or exercising, depending on where you are in your uh musical journey, what I really like to do is before I even pick up a bass, I'll listen to a song a bunch of times, or like a playlist. Like, and I mean, I do this like actively. I need to listen to a playlist later tonight of stuff that I
Mhm.
got to learn for a gig in a couple weeks, and I'm not worried about what key it's in or anything. I'm just listening to it. I'm listening to the lyrics, kind of paying attention to the form.
Yep.
Then maybe the next day I'm listening to it and I'm starting to picture what I think the chord progression is.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, I haven't picked up a bass yet.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm making note of like, oh, that bass line sounds more involved. Like things might just sound like roots and fifths. And then you figure out what the key is. You can have like a little piano app on your phone that's in the key of G. Now I'm listening to the song, imagining the bass, like I'm hearing the bass and I'm thinking, okay, root fifth. All right,
Mhm.
now we're on the four
Mhm.
chord. To be clear, that's like I said, if you're feeling a little more comfortable in your journey. And the best advice that I got in the last couple of years, I heard Nicole Rowe, who's an amazing bass player. She's playing with Incubus now, and it was asked, how did she prepare? I think she got the Incubus tour with, or the gig with, not, who knows how much notice, but not like a year's notice. And she said that she did a red light, yellow light, green light system. And I've done that for every gig that's been demanding since then. And I think the concept kind of explains itself. But let's say you have 40 songs. January is a good amount of time. So maybe all 40 of those songs are in the red, and you definitely have your work cut out for you. But maybe 10 of those songs are in the green, and maybe that's the Brown Eyed Girls and the Wagon Wheels. So it's like, don't spend time on those. You already know how to play those. How many of those songs can you get into yellow as quick as possible? How many of those yellow songs can you get into green? And then you have a bit more of a whittled down list.
Yeah.
And it can be kind of daunting because I've done that where I'm like, okay, every song on this list is in the red. Like, I got a lot of work to do. But sometimes you feel really anxious. And then you look at it and it's like, you know what? I'm good. I got like 5 songs in yellow, 5 in red. Everything else is good to go.
Yeah.
And then just get those reds to yellow as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But the playlist, just listening,
I,
listening as much as possible.
yeah. Well, you're talking about listening to the whole song, right?
Exactly.
Not just the bass part. And, it's easy to get caught up in that as bass players, right? But we are musicians. And so we're supporting other musicians. We're not playing by ourselves. So it's important to know in that middle, listen to the whole song.
Well, and also as I say,
Everybody
like,
gangsta until they get to the bridge.
exactly. The bridge ruins many a musician. But how are we going to learn how to play the bass to a song if we've never heard it before?
Yeah.
I mean, truly, that's like driving too. I've said this a bunch of times, but it's. Uh, I say that's like driving on a back road in the dark, and you're driving too fast around the corner. You don't know what's around that corner.
Yep.
But if you've listened to a song 4 or 5 times and you kind of know the bridge is coming, maybe you know how to play the whole song except for the bridge. So then you just stop at the bridge, and now you have like 8 or 16 bars you have to learn. And if it's any modern pop music, you're okay because the bridge doesn't seem to exist anymore, or the bridge is just rest for
Right.
8 bars.
Or hey man, look, there's some tunes that's like, you get to the you get to, oh man, that ain't gonna play itself. I got a gig coming up on Halloween where I'm playing electric bass and synth bass, and
Nice.
I'm like, oh, some of this stuff, because I'm not a keyboard player. I'm familiar with the keyboard, all those things. I'm playing a gang of key bass these days, but I know there's physical things that I need to get through, and so slowing it down, and just somebody said something. Tiny says 4 bars at a time. Yeah, not a lot of people know this these days, but I got my degree playing classical upright. A fluke. I don't even know how that happened, but there I was.
Here we are.
There I was. There's this meme. Because I'm inappropriate, I have to share this meme. There's this meme of Jesus around all these people, and he's sitting there, and he's like, "So there I was, the only white guy in Jerusalem." Anyway,
That's
so
awesome.
I'm, I was in my 30s. I didn't read. I had to learn how to read. All that. You go to music school, you have to do recitals and things like that. Um, there's this Kutsevitsky piece I had to do, and the Eccles. The Eccles Sonata?
I don't think I do.
Okay, look it
I
up.
need to check it out.
It's
Yeah.
it's an it's an upright thing, but it's challenging, right? It's like all fourth movement is all 16th notes or whatever. This goes back to Charles's question. You got a few months or whatever to learn this thing. I say, okay, well, today I better get on these 2 bars right here.
Yep.
I better learn these 2 bars well enough and add the next note, and then the next note, add the next 2 bars. Oh, I got 4 bars. Another
Put
thing
the
I think
puzzle pieces together.
you're building a Lego piece, and also Charles Ray, none of us are ever going to play a bass line for a song exactly the way that it is on the recording. It ain't gonna happen. You need to have that part, you know what I'm saying, but you're not gonna play it just like the bass player played it. And so I think giving yourself a little bit of grace as well. There are, like, you mentioned Sir Duke earlier, bump, but well, you need to play that.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? You need to play that line. The rest of it, are you going to necessarily? I don't think I've ever heard anybody play note for note for note what Nate Watts played, and the people on the dance floor don't care.
Nate probably didn't play it the same note for note from different takes. I was just talking about Feeling All Right, the Joe Cocker version with Carol Kay, and it's like there's definitely little rhythmic nuggets and melodic nuggets, but to me it sounds like that's like an improvised groove bass line. And you look at Jamerson and Chuck Rainey and a lot of cats, Willie Weeks, and sometimes I'd like to hear like, okay, well, we know the Willie Weeks Donny Hathaway live record and how he played on Little Ghetto Boy, which is amazing, but it's like what they do on the third night or on the second night. The chords aren't changing, and some of his ideas are the same, but those fills and stuff. So I've run into this, and I'm sure Ted has also, where you get so focused on a part that you like that you spend all your time like trying to transcribe something, and then it's like, okay, well, I got this one measure down, but I still have 39 songs and the rest of this song to learn. And then, I mean, I'm joking because I'm speaking from, laughing because I'm speaking from experience, but like, it could be, I've totally botched the slap break and You Can Call Me Al, and I'm like, it's coming, like this is the moment. And then it's like beat one happens and it's like, oh, I missed it. I should have played on the E. And that happened once or twice. So now I got a good approximation, but
Yeah.
it's like my focus was so on this one moment that I ended up screwing up the bigger picture because I was too hyper focused. So sometimes you got to kind of go for the like B or the B plus versus the A plus, especially if you have like 40 songs to learn.
Well, I think it's gotta feel good, and
Absolutely.
got to feel good first. In a live situation, I mean, there are times when you need to play something note for note of what's written on the page. I did a lot of musical theater, and there's some stuff, it's like that's what they want. There's not a lot of room for improvisation there. But I played in a lot of bar rooms over my life, and people need to feel good. I'm down here in New Orleans where it's laissez le bon temps roulette. We partying, right? So, it's just not the note for note. I think if you're gonna transcribe something, transcribing it to just to say you have this one part is kind of useless if you don't get the information out of it. If you don't see, oh, here's this common rhythmic figure. Oh, here's why this groove is so funky or feels this way. What can I take from that? It's like learning. You can always tell when somebody's learned a new word because they use it all the time. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Um, in Baltimore, and I'm gonna ask you a kind of a loaded question, and um, I don't know what other way to ask the question, so I'm gonna just ask the question. What was the environment that you grew up in? What was that? What was that like?
I mean,
Let me back up. Let me
yeah,
back
yeah,
up.
yeah.
I'm talking about the black and
Yes,
white. Let me just say that. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't buy this thing. White guy ain't got no rhythm. I don't. I don't.
sure.
I don't get into that. You know what I'm saying? But I know that in some environments, like in my environment down here in the South, there's music all around. Somebody's always dancing. Music is and has always been a part of the fabric. Charles Ray, thanks for the super chat. It's always been a part of the fabric, my culture, right? Um, but I still think that these things can be. I hope I'm not being insulting. I'm trying to get to a question like, do you think that you come from a musical family? Where did they get it from?
So, yeah, I mean, I think all right, I got so many thoughts going through my head. I mean, my dad is like a drummer. My mom sings and plays piano. They were, met in I think like well, they definitely met in college. I think in a music theory class. I think they both just had a passion for music.
Yeah.
My sister sings and plays clarinet, and so I grew up doing like concert band kind of stuff, but I
Mm,
didn't really like it.
mm,
I mean, that's not true. There was times I liked it. I thought it was kind of dorky, and then as your awkward teenage years come on, I was like more into sports.
mhm.
Still kind of involved in music, but it was when I got to college that I really got into it. And I do want to answer the question, and I have a lot of thoughts. I just happen to really like Parliament Funkadelic. I mean, I liked a lot of stuff. I liked the jam bands, Fish and the Grateful Dead
Mm,
and that kind of stuff. But
mm,
Parliament and the Meters, like, dude, I heard the Meters when I was 18 years old, and it's not, I can't say like I learned every George Porter line verbatim, but I was trying to.
mhm,
Like that first record, I just thought this is the coolest stuff I've ever heard.
mhm.
So I was really interested in that. But at the same time, like I said, I was playing in like a country bluegrass band. That was my first professional gig. And then I liked Frank Zappa and Oingo Boingo and XTC. And so it was kind of like ADD all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
But I moved to Baltimore in 2010 with like the intention of wanting to play hip hop and soul and funk and jazz and anything like groovy. And then I got like kind of on a fusion bender for a little bit there that kind
Mhm.
of took me off the path. But I was just fortunate to meet really good musicians that and I'm at that time I'm like 25 years old and not a lot of commitment. So I was able to go to a lot of jam sessions and
Yeah.
um meet like-minded people. And this does tie back into the 2 bars because there's a really great friend of mine, a great singer-songwriter named Brooks Long, and we met in college, and I think he's amazing, and we've played tons of music together, and we would stretch out and vamp. But what I didn't get is I was coming from, like, the jam band idea of jamming, and he was coming from, like, a James Brown,
Mm,
Prince type thing where it's like, no, this is E7 and we're like funking and people are dancing. And he kind of called me out. And I like, this is one of the most defining moments I just remember. And he said something like, after a gig, he said, "You're changing it up too much." And I
mm,
said, "Changing it up? What do you mean?" And so he sings and plays guitar, like great rhythm guitar, super funky. And he said, "You're changing it up too much. Every time I think I, as Brooks thinks I've figured out what you, as in me, are
mm,
playing, and
mhm.
he adjusts his guitar part to what I'm doing on the bass. So I was doing the opposite of the 2 bar bass line. I was like every 2 bars doing something different, too many fills, not committing to an idea.
MJ, thanks.
And
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
I mean, this guy was like someone I still greatly respect, and I consider him like a brother. And so it was sort of like he wasn't scolding me, but he was frustrated, and I was kind of like,
Yeah.
oh man, like I gotta make right. So then I just sort of had a change of mind.
Yeah.
And he'd hit me to stuff like maybe dun dun bum 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 and I guess that's kind of like the guitar line, but it'd just be like, hey, you notice this guy, and it's not a to play repetitively is not bad, and that goes back to like from the practice side. Can you play a 2-bar bass line for 5 minutes, for 7 minutes, for 13 minutes? That's harder than you think, and to play it consistently articulation wise. And so I'm kind of rambling here, but that was like a very defining moment for me of just like, I need to lock it down. I need to hold it down. And then realizing all the guys that I liked, George Porter, Chuck Rainey, Willie Weeks, every like R&B bass player, Jerry Jamott, they were doing variations, but a lot of times it was within a 2 to 4 bar phrase. And I just was kind of like, the stuff I was practicing was so removed from that. So this is getting a little deep, but I felt like I was working on all my modes and all this trying to solo and all that kind of stuff. And I actually remember asking myself, like, how is this making me funkier?
Mm.
And to be clear, I do think you need to know all your chords and
Sure.
scales and fretboard, like that stuff's crucial. But it was like, none of that is making me groove. No, nobody's calling me because they want me to play above.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to be careful to say play above the 12th fret, because I'm not one of those guys. Like, I think we should just make music on the bass, but I wasn't fulfilling the foundational role. And
Yeah.
then I
Yeah.
started getting calls from drummers I really like to play with because I was like locking in with them. So I don't know if that answers your question,
No,
but it was a
it does.
change of
It
mindset.
it does. I mean, I think listen, I am hard on drummers,
Mhm.
particularly young drummers. And I don't mean it in a like I'm the old guy and you should listen but number one, I've played with one of the greatest drummers uh to ever live, right? Nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, one of the most sampled drum. I sat in that bass chair for 8 or 9 years, right?
Incredible.
So I know what that's like. Damn, I got passionate about that. I, Ronnie Beck was in Tower of Power for a while. I I have had my ass handed to me by older cats. Just like, man, lock that shit down, right? I
Yep.
mean, I know I'm gonna just go on and say it. Somebody gonna see it. It's gonna piss somebody off. But I've had this conversation with this particular guitar player to their face. I will never say anything behind their back or online that I haven't said to their face. There's a gig coming up, and the person texts me, "Are you cool with such and such?" No, because they won't play fucking parts.
Yeah.
They won't play parts. They play too loud. They play for themselves. They don't play parts. Play some music. You know what I'm saying? Play what's happening. That shit drives me insane. I'm sorry. It it,
No,
it,
dude.
listen. I look at somebody like that and I'm like, how in the hell have you played for this long? And when a song like Sweet Thing comes up and you don't play, that's the part, bro.
It's not negotiable. That I
Yeah,
talk about that. There's certain things that are not.
or if you playing yearning for your love. If you're not playing that, you're not playing the song, and that sets the song up. Okay, woosah.
Yes. Well, but yeah, I mean, those are the thing is like, especially that Gap Band, man. I love that song, and that's like, that is definitely a part. That is a huge piece of the puzzle, and it's not the same without that. I
Yeah, I mean,
totally
even
get
if
that.
what you playing is cool, I mean, like I've said to people, look, that song what we playing right there, that was a hit. That's a hit. That's a standard. It's a hit for a reason. It's not because of anything you or I have done.
Mhm.
It's already a hit. You know what I'm saying? I have a bootleg. I have a lot of Prince bootlegs, but these Purple Rain tour rehearsals, right? And he's playing The Bird for like 30 minutes.
Mm.
30 minutes. and it's the same groove. And at one point, maybe at the 20-minute mark, he gets on the mic and he says, "Same groove, easy $1,000,000."
Wow.
That's Prince saying that. And so it's not like these cats don't have the facility to come outside, but they understand what the role is. And we're going to have a part 2 of this at some point. You know,
Please, this is great.
I mean,
I would love to do that.
I have a feeling that we're going to be locking and speaking a little bit more, a lot more actually. Let me pay
I'd
some
love that.
bills here real quick, y'all. Today is sponsored by Tom Play, interactive sheet music and tab for like thousands of songs. There is a link in the description of this video if you want to try 14 days for free, interactive scores, tempo control, loop and learn, all that good stuff. Before we get out of here, Ian, we're just going to, wind this down a little bit. I want you to let everybody know where they can find you. If they're in the Baltimore area, if you got some original music, say all your things.
I mean, right now I kind of got some things in the works. So the best place to find me is just on my Instagram, which is just at Ian Trusheim. My website is years out of date, so don't go to the website. But I got a good friend of mine. We got some things going behind the scenes. So I'm hoping to come out early next year with a bunch of educational materials, maybe some courses. And in terms of the original music and performing, it's the same thing. There's a lot of things in the works right now. My band, the Morel Trio, super excited about that, trying to get a record done. But yeah, in terms of just gigging, if you're anywhere in the mid-Atlantic, I try to post about the, things that I'm excited about. So Instagram is kind of the one-stop shop for the time being, and just stay tuned.
And what would you do? How would you encourage folks to take on this kind of a project? Because I'm gonna do it. I may not post it all, but I need to do it. I need to do this 2 bar a day thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I stopped, it was not for any creative reasons. It's so creatively fulfilling and rewarding, and a chance to, like I said, insight into what your tendencies are. It's like, oh wow, I'm like keep playing the same groove. That's okay to be like, that's my thing, but also how can I expand? For me, it was kind of the social media, the video editing and the posting, and just having the time. I have a wonderful family that I want to spend time with, my wife and daughter, and my job, teaching and gigging, it was just too much. But I honestly, to get into it, I would say just do it. And if you don't know where to begin, put on a drum beat that you like, find a loop on YouTube, and honestly, as simple as pick a note and match something that's already happening rhythmically in the drums. That is a method that's going to work. As you get more comfortable, you're going to find that you're hearing bass lines in your head, and you might be trying to find a drum beat that matches the bass line that you made up. It's like, well, yeah, but you got to start somewhere. And roots and fifths, funk boxes, I call them funk boxes. So that's like your flat 7, your root, maybe your minor third, your 4. Learning it's just like learn your minor pentatonic scale or major pentatonic scale. Pick a couple notes. You could try the don't play on 2 and 4. It's like just as a guideline. And then then you start to play with that. It's like maybe you play a high note or do a slap or a pop on 2 and 4. I'm not really a thumping and plucking guy. I love it. I just don't have that skill set.
I'm glad you said thumping and plucking, because somebody gonna come in here and get all in their feelings and stuff.
But yeah, I mean, you have to start somewhere.
Sure.
Pick a note. You let's say you just got a bass. You could literally play an open string and just hit that thing and match a rhythm, and then play something consistent. And now you have a recognizable bass line. Yeah. Think about I mean, I feel like there's so many old pop tunes that the bass line is just like boom, 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 boom. I mean, that's a bass line.
I'm gonna tell you this before we get out of here. The first one for me was either Controversy or 1999.
Nice.
Boom, 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 boom. You know what I'm saying? But look, we're going to land this plane in. Man, I really appreciate you coming on, man. This has been a real pleasure having this conversation. I love that we had some engagement, people asking questions and all that. Y'all go follow Ian. We're going to go on and land this plane. We'll catch you next week. Now listen, I need to let y'all know that next week is going to, for those of you who are interested in getting endorsements or trying to figure out how that works, how that world works, I can't, oh man, do I tell them now? Aguilar
Little teaser.
GHS strings, DR strings. We're going to get into the real deal about getting endorsement deals and the stuff you need to do to get those relationships and maintain those relationships. Ian, we're going to sign off, brother. Thank you, man.
I can't wait for part 2, man. Thank you so much, Ted. It's been a real treat. Thank you, buddy.
See y'all next time. Peace. 2 fingers.
Peace.